All right, so let's roll into our training and our podcast. We're going to be doing PCI secure self-assessment questionnaires. And you're probably going, yawn, how boring can this be? And you're probably a little right. So we're going to get into PCI and how it affects you and your WordPress e-commerce sites. I will warn you, there probably is a little bit of boring yawnness in here. However, if you do have e-commerce for your WordPress site, it's something you better know, because if you don't, it could turn around and bite you pretty hard. So let's go ahead and roll right into the training. So what is PCI? So I got to put out the disclaimer right away. Okay, I am not a super Gucci awesomeness PCI expert. Okay, I understand security very well, and I understand PCI to a decent level. However, I'm not the Gucci super expert that your company may need. So the data presented in here is informational and is subject to change. So just keep that in mind. So again, there's good stuff in here. It's awesome. But if your company needs a super Gucci PCI expert, I am probably not the exact person for you. I can give you some advice and some direction, but that's about it. All right, so the payment card industry, which is what PCI stands for, there's actually a standard. They call it PCI Dss. That's Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. And PCI has gone through iterations. The most recent one of the PCI Dss is 3.2, which came out in April of 2016, just recently. And they made some changes because of the explosion of e-commerce and people on the web. PCI has been around for quite a while, and it has got a pretty good understanding of how the credit card industry is going to operate on e-commerce. However, as these things have changed with people like myself or anyone else getting involved in the e-commerce world, then the standards have to change. So a recent standard change was April of 2016. The scope of this podcast / training that I'm putting out here is focusing only on the e-commerce piece. Okay, it's all focusing on the outsourcing, and also if you were to maintain the data on your website from a PCI or payment card industry standard. I'm not going to get into we call them a point of sale systems. It's the little boxes that you run your credit card through. I'm not going to get into that. It's a different animal. It's the same concept and it's the same things that are occurring as far as transferring credit card data. However, they are held under a different questionnaire on how they do business. So I'm only focusing on the e-commerce piece of this, and you'll see what I talk about here in just a minute about that. Something to consider is a friend of mine talked to about PCI, and he said, well, just do what the rest of the web is doing. And that's true. You need to understand what is the web doing and what are they using for their security compliance aspects of this. But just to put it in perspective, my job on the full-time job, it deals with this stuff pretty routinely. So and compliance / regulatory is non-negotiable. It's something that you will comply with, you will do, and it's important that we understand that. But as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, it's extremely important for me to understand the regulatory and compliance requirements of my business. And PCI Dss is one of those. Now, it's great for the fact that it's open to some interpretation, which is awesome, and ambiguity, which leads people to kind of go make judgments on their own. And PCI has made that available to you so that you do have the permission to think on your own. However, there are consequences for thinking on your own. So we'll get into some of that. Just understand that based on if you have a e-commerce business online, you fall under PC, and you exchange credit cards, you fall under one level of the PCI regulatory requirements and compliance requirements. So just understand you are not absolved from that, but it changes based on how you do business. So PCI's aspect is that they believe that you should assess, remediate, and report. And what that means is that you assess the situation if you have any challenges with you in your environment. So basically you understand what's broken, do you have any vulnerabilities. If you determine you have vulnerabilities, you have an issue, you remediate those, and then you file reports with PCI. Okay, again, it's very high level, it's not getting down in the weeds, but their overall goal is that you work for yourself, you understand the risks, you evaluate the risks, you remediate the risks, and then you report on things that are out of your scope that you have to fix on your annual assessments. Now, the one thing to think about with that, though, is if you are breached, which means if somebody breaks into your site, okay, if that happens, then things change a little bit. And so, therefore, you need to understand what that looks like, because PCI considers that if you're breached, then things are a little bit different on the level side of the house. So we'll go ahead and go down here and go into the levels that they consider. But just understand that if you're breached and the fact that someone gets into your system, it could get very challenging quickly. So it's important, behooves you to make sure that you have done everything you can to make sure that your site is secure. Because again, if you're gonna have to come back and talk about this, and you haven't done what you're supposed to do, is where it can get kind of ugly. Okay, so the levels, there's annually. Again, there's level 1 through 4. Level 1 has greater than 6 million transactions. So if you do like more than that transactions in a year, more than 6 million transactions, and this applies to a point of sale system, or if you're like at your local Subway or retail chain that you can buy stuff from, if you have greater than 6 million transactions, you fall into a level 1. Now that would be in a case of, let's just say, Subway. I'm sure they go through more than 6 million transactions in a year. So, but that's to all of their franchises. So how does that work? They would all have to go, the main corporate would go through a level of security, an audit, and then how that would filter down to all the individuals. Honestly, it's not really the scope of this podcast, but corporate would most likely end up dealing with that, and then there would be ramifications at each of the sites based on how corporate has done. Level 2 is 1 to 6 million transactions. 3 is 20,000 to 1 million transactions, and level 4 is less than 20,000 transactions. So the small to medium businesses, you're probably getting in level 3 and level 4. And hence, where most e-commerce sites probably operate is between level 3 and level 4. You get the Amazons and the big companies, and those guys are, they're to the moon. But in most cases of a small or medium business, which is commonly referred to in the industry as Sierra Mike Bravo, okay, SMB, those are between 20,000 or less than between 1 million and down, basically. Okay.